Yeah, that was a. I mean, it was a decent pot, and it's a knockout. So, did we knock someone out? We knocked one of them out, I think, right? Oh no, that was short. Yeah, we knocked both out. Sorry. Of course, of course. Pretend like I just knew exactly what was happening there, and I had no idea. So, I mean, it was a good pot to pick up with the Ace King, obviously. Yeah, just on a lot of tables here, guys, so. Decisions. I think one of the biggest mistakes that players make when they're multi-tabling is to get too passive. I think it's probably the biggest mistake. It's very easy just to quickly click call in a sort of borderline spot, rather than size out a 3-bet and take an aggressive line that you know could put you in some tough spots on later streets. And I think that's probably. I mean, it does make some sense, from 17-4, 22, 22 M4. I don't think we can fold. It's not bubble, is it? Nope, we're in the money. Yeah, we can't quite fold to that guy. Any run good? Yay, run good. We got some run good. Yeah, I mean, he was M4. He's a good player. He's pretty short. So, yeah, I mean, it's definitely close. But he's jamming with a pair in there of 4, 8, 12, 16. What do you have? How many players did he have behind? 5. Well, M4 with 5 players. So a pan of 20. And Ace-8 has a pan of 24. So, I mean, it's definitely close, but we're so short that we don't really, can't really get too choosy about the spots that we take. It was probably pretty close, but at the same time, the pot odds are pretty huge. We were short. We need to get chips. He could roll 3s. He could roll Ace-3 suited. He could roll King-10 suited. 10-Jack suited. Hands like that. So it was definitely a close spot, but went for it. Paid off. It's nice when you get there, isn't it? Let's have a look here. Yep. Ace King now. This has just been a roller coaster ride. This $55 7.5k guaranteed, hasn't it? Top left, and we're 12 of 9 in now. And I think I'm just going to shove here. Just think for a minute and shove. It's probably fine to take that line. If we 3-bet to 45, I mean, I actually think it probably looks even stronger than a shove. I mean, it kind of looks like we want action because we've got shorts behind and we're not that deep ourselves, and the guy's pretty shallow that's opened, only M8. It's close. I mean, depends on the player, their multi-level thinking, which sort of, I think a decent player is going to see a jam as hands like 5s, maybe King-Queen suited, Ace-10, stuff like that. Whereas it's, a 3-bet might look more like very polarizing, like, okay, he has like Ace-Jack up, sort of pocket 9s up sort of thing. Or, I mean, once in a while, Ace-Deuce off, that's 3-betting to fold. But it does look quite polarizing, and it does look like a large percentage of our range is going to be, hands that we're trying to entice action with that are quite nutty. It's hard to say quite nutty, really, pre-flop, isn't it? But yeah, you know what I mean. So I think we'll speculate there, and we'll just bet small here. And wow, kind of an interesting spot, isn't it, on the top middle there? I mean, we maybe could bet to try and fold out some hands like 6s and 7s, but it would probably need to be a bet turn and river. At the same time, we probably actually have the best hand often enough to just be able to check and decide river how we want to play it. He's probably going to barrel, I think, a lot top right, as it was he didn't. I think checking or betting either is fine. I decided to check, and I don't think he has much worse there. I think ace high top middle is going to just check. It's a close one. I decided to, sorry guys, I've got tables going everywhere here. I decided to check top right because I think if he's got jack or better, he's going to value. And I think if he's got ace king or ace queen, I just want to give him the chance maybe to try and pump some more into the pot. I mean, it really does look like he's got ace king or ace queen, and he's never going to hero call. Wow, he actually hit the 10, so we missed value. And I was saying I'm pretty good at getting value before, and I lied because that was pretty bad. Check calling flop is definitely fine. Turn, I think checking. Yeah, I mean, river is kind of close. I mean, it just looks like, I mean, that's one of the few hands that we can actually get, when you think about it, it's one of the very, very few hands that we can actually get value from. Really, I mean, hard for him to have a 10 based on the pre-flop action. 3, 6. I'm just going to call, well, it's such a small raise, isn't it? 3-bet versus button is high. Yeah, I think I might actually fold that one. Pretty cheap to call. The raise size was a little bit alarming. I mean, it was so small. 3-betting small out of position. It's usually not a recipe for winning poker, but it's hard to say if he knows that or not. And so, yeah, I mean, I wanted to call, but the problem is the negative implied odds are pretty high because of our stack depth. You know, our stack is around M10 or 11. If we do happen to flop sort of a 10-8-4 flop where we got middle pair, we're probably going to have to call a couple of streets. And after 3-bet pre-flop, a couple of streets kind of means our whole stack. So, yeah, I mean, that's why I folded it, is because of the SPR that's going to be created post-flop if we do call. And the fact that his raise sizing really looked like he wanted action. And I might be reading too much into that, but yeah, I mean, to me, that's how it sort of looked, so. 3's 13. I'm going to shove here in the big 109. It's pretty close. We only have M15, 10, 3, 13. We only have M15-ish, 16. But, yeah, I mean, I just think it's okay. I mean, if we just call, then the SPR is pretty bad, and we run into, obviously, monsters here and just look like a huge fish. But yeah, I mean, it's a pretty awkward spot. We don't know anything about the players. Yeah, I mean, we're semi-deep, and it's probably about as deep as I'll go before I, you know, we busted that one. I'm just about to bring it in. Ace King against Ace Jack, no good. Yeah, I mean, I probably wouldn't. It's probably right on my limit for the way I would play that hand when we're talking about. How am I going to do this? I think I might just call. This one, can we isolate here? Yeah, I think we can. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to do that with 9s or 10s. Jacks is probably right on, and I'm not going to do it with a deeper stack, you know, like M20. So for me, it was literally right on, sort of what I would do that with. So I've just tried to take the initiative without getting too overly committed in the top right. And I think, well, I think we can probably check, actually. There's not really that many bad cards top middle. Just in case. It looks like he might have jacks or the same hand. But I don't think we can quite fold. And I just have no idea why he would ever bet river there. That was pretty fishy. That was pretty grotesque. Because you're just not really, you know... Yeah. I mean, if we have any pair once he takes that line, maybe he's doing like a reverse. Like if I bet here, he's going to think that I was pot controlling with a pair. So he has to fold because it would be a ridiculous bluff. So he has to put me on a hand because it would be just too retarded to be a bluff kind of thing. Therefore, he's going to fold. Like that's sort of, he knows that I know, multi-level thinking thing. Maybe. I'm not sure. But like, check turn and then just bet sort of smallish river. I mean, it's just not going to work as a bluff very often unless your opponent sort of really, I think, overanalyzes it and says, and sort of, yeah, I mean, just the based sheerly off the price that we're getting to call and the line that he's taking, I mean, it's just not going to get enough folds, I don't think, to be profitable. I mean, I'm probably going to call there with any pair at that point. I mean, there's no point raising with our ace-10 because I don't think any worse hands will call, but at the same time, it's a very strong hand as a bluff catcher and actually could even beat some hands that are value betting. So, yeah, so that big 109 was kind of annoying. I think that in terms of risk versus reward, you know, that's why the play is pretty borderline. We were kind of risking a lot of chips for not a lot of chips, which is normally not good. We were M15-ish, and yeah, I mean, we've got two unknowns, an open and a 3-bet. I mean, it's typically sort of a 4-betting spot. We could have just 4-bet small and then maybe decided, probably called off, but maybe found a hero fold if it went 5-bet, 6-bet. We could have folded. Yeah, I mean, again, in hindsight, nice to think of these things now, but I think 4-betting small, if I hadn't been on a gazillion tables, I probably would have. But I think just because I'm on so many tables, it was easier just to slide in the chips and jam it. Having said that, I still think that those players that I have no notes on that are likely recreational players, a lot of the time are still going to snap with like 8s and, you know, ace, king, ace, queen is going to snap, and those sorts of hands, 8s, 9s, 10s are going to snap. So, I mean, I think it's still fine. It's obviously once we run into two overpairs, it looks like we've just dunked off a punted an M15 stack, but you know, that's obviously was worst case. They both had close to the nuts, but I do think there was yeah, a little bit more to it. What are we going to do here? I think I'm probably going to 5. It's almost 4. Get 25. 3-bet. On the buttons, 5 first. Nah, I'm going to fold it. It's pretty close. This one here, this guy looks pretty strong. 5, 6. We've only opened M7 UTG, so I'm going to fold it. And he has ace-jack, so... he shouldn't really be doing that with much worse than that, so... yeah. Was that, I don't think we can fold that to that sort of action. And unfortunately, my stars has just done that wacky thing that it does. And we get rivered with the king there. Oh, my stars is back. That's good. It kind of froze up for a minute there. Where's that tournament where we're doing? Oh, here it is. This one. It's a fun one. $55. And Keno has limped. I don't mind limping behind. Top right there. Now obviously we have to call when we flop bottom pair. I think Akino's not really the sort of player that's too creative and not going to barrel. He did come second in the... He seems to always do well in... I think he does well deep stacked. Big tournaments, he always seems to do well. He came second in the 100 rebuy on Sunday for 40-odd thousand. Yeah, I don't know if it's a card he would barrel on. It's pretty good for our range. You know, we can have sort of a 6, a 4, 7, 8, 5, 7. So I think just folding is okay. And I don't think, like I said, I just don't think he's going to barrel with that higher frequency. He's more of a sort of an ABC player, I think. Takes opportunities as they come that are a little bit more. I don't think he forces the action too much. You know, which when you're deep stacked is completely fine. You know, and that's I think why he does well in deep stack tournaments. He's quite patient, I think, and calculating, and doesn't really miss any opportunities when they come along, but does generally find good opportunities to take. Very solid player. Obviously a Stars Pro. And 12 and 6 is 24. We can't fold this, you know, to this guy here. Can we? No, we can't. Well, 11 we just can't, can we? 6, 12, 24. No, we can't. We're M6. I just hate it because he's always like, even if he's got 5, 6, he's got good equity, you know? I mean, Queen 5 has got equity, and I just don't win these flips. I just never win these hands with an ace-x. You know, it's a key hand. It's like final table bubble. You know, I just know I'm never going to. I just never win that hand. I never win those sort of hands. You know, when you need to. It's annoying. It's like I can't predict the future though, so you can't just read in the future. But you know, he does have good equity with the hand he had, so and he should be jamming it. It's just one of those annoying situations where. You know, we just have to call and have the best hand a lot of the time, but just never have very good equity, which is annoying. ICM consideration is somewhat. You know, I did think, can we fold because of the ICM, but I just don't think I'm quite ready to fold. I mean, the pay jumps at this point are not quite big enough, and we need to get chips still. And I think there's still a lot of merit at that point to try and play to get chips, to sort of, you know, give yourself a good chance on the final table, rather than knitting it up. I mean, we're only sort of 6-ish, so I think knitting it up when you're 5-handed final table bubble is going to be pretty suicidal because you're going to get to the final table with no chips. Yeah. 12. This is close again, but I think at M10, I think that guy's slightly, ever so slightly too deep for us to get too excited there. Ace 10 I probably would have called. Ace Jack I would have called. I mean, doesn't appear to be that loose, and it is quite a big jam, so I think just folding is okay. I think c-betting here is probably not too bad. The big blind can have a wide range, so we're only really more focused on trying to fold out the guy behind and the cutoff. He does hit us with a little mini raise, so I just folded it rather than get ourselves into any sort of tricky spots. I think that he can do that with any pair, but if he does have a pair, I don't think he's folding because he's short. He could have trapped sometimes. He could have a king is not impossible. It does seem quite fishy though, so who knows? Just because of his stats and just the fact that he flattered quite short and then min-raise flop is kind of a fishy thing to do. That's the only information I have to base that on. It's not very sound information, but information nonetheless. So I just had the ace-jack here and barreled this guy before we go on break. So the bet sizing here is an important thing. Decided to call from small blind ace-jack, so we can definitely have this sort of, you know, kings and queens in our range. He calls the semi-bluff turn. We could sometimes have the best hand, but I think more than that, I'm trying to fold out any pair under the queen. I think a bet turn and this bet sizing into 1100, you know, 800, I think looks like we're trying to get max value. And I think it's very hard for him to call with any pair under the queen. I think if he has an ace-queen, we do have an ace blocker, and he's a little bit of a loose opener, so that's going to be... I mean, he does have some combos, obviously, of that, but most of the time... and, you know, queen 10 and queen 9 suited and queen jack and that stuff, but we have a jack blocker as well. Most of the time, I think he's got jacks down. He's probably got a hand like 8s, 7s, something like that. He could even have the same hand some of the time, I guess. But I just think this bet size here folds out a really high percentage of that range, and only really sort of, I think queen 10 up will call. Well, maybe any queen, but yeah, a queen will call. He shouldn't have a king. He's kind of capped his range when he checks back flop. I think he might bet with a king and just start trying to build the pot at this stack depth. And so once he caps his range, he kind of looks like he has, you know, an ace-jack. I mean, we could have had the best hand. Maybe sometimes he's got ace-10, but he could have pairs under the board as well and just try to control and induce bluffs. Hard to say. I mean, he might even just bet sixes for protection because there's probably a lot of bad turn cards. But I do think that, you know, betting is okay in this spot as a semi-bluff. We do have the gut shot with the flush draw. But if you are going to bet, you have to bet big because he looks like he's trying to get to showdown. There's no point, I think, betting small because it just makes it so easy for him just to call correctly. And so I think you've got to tailor your bet sizes sometimes because you have to have in your mind a target range that you're trying to fold out. And of course, if you can fold out a lot of a player's range, then the bluff's likely to be profitable. In this situation, I think we can fold out a lot of our opponent's range, and then you just have to tailor your bet size to achieve that. And in this particular instance, I think betting bigger made a lot of sense because we put that sort of, you know, weaker part of his range under a lot of pressure. At the same time, we have flattered pre-flop from small blind, and this is a sort of board that we can connect with, our range can connect with, and so it's a fairly bet turn, bet river large, I think is actually a decent story to be telling. So on that note, guys, break time. Be back soon. This is Acesup. Thanks for joining me again.